Bruce Garriock, Don Brennan, and Ken Warren for Post Media. A big week coming up here in Dallas as the Senators prepare for the 2018 NHL Draft, where they have two selections, the number 4 and the number 22 pick in the first round. There's been an awful lot of discussion about what's gone off the ice here in the offseason, but finally there will turn some attention to what's going to happen on the ice. And Kenny, they have to be excited about the fact that they have a top 5 pick and they have an opportunity to get a good player.
It's, in one sense, everything that's happened off the ice, like you say, Bruce, is taken away from the fact this is their first top 5 pick in really a generation, right? And they're going to get a very good player with that number 4, barring a trade, but I would be really shocked if they made a trade to get rid of that 4th overall pick. And you can, maybe it's Filip Zadina, maybe it's Brady Tkachuk, somewhere in there. You're going to get a very good player. So that part of it is exciting for Senators fans. It might be, a while before he's a huge impact player, but it is something promising for the future with everything that's gone on.
Well, it's the first time since 1996, Don, that they have their own first round pick in the top 5. The last time they selected in the top 5 was when they took Jason Spezza after making the Alexei Yashin deal in 2001 with the 2nd overall pick. I think you've been a bit of a proponent for Brady Tkachuk, and you wouldn't mind if they ended up with him, depending on how those top 5 players fall.
They could go any number of ways. I think that's kind of a player that they need, a physical, big guy with great bloodlines. If he's anything at all like his brother Matthew Tkachuk in Calgary, he's going to be a great player. Because I think Matthew Tkachuk is, and his dad, Keith, another, So that would be, to me, a good place to start. I don't know that I'm convinced that they're going to have that 4th overall pick. They may trade up. They may try to trade up. They may wind up giving it to Colorado, depending on what else goes down. But if they do go with the number 4 pick, I believe that they're going to go after Brady Tkachuk. Now, they could also look at finding a replacement for Erik Karlsson, and a guy that's a puck-moving defenseman like Quinn Hughes or Adam Boqvist.
There you go.
I don't know if I'm right, but he's interestingly enough, Boqvist, Swede, and 154 pounds, just like Erik Karlsson was when he was drafted, and he's a very highly rated guy. So we don't know yet, but
can I say one thing? I'm glad you're not hosting the draft party at the Canadian Tire Center Friday night, because if they trade out of that first round, I think there'd be a lot of disappointment. One of the things, though, I could see them doing is if they really aren't set on taking any of those forwards, and we should mention them, obviously Dahlin's going 1 as a defenseman, but if they aren't set on taking any of those forwards in Svechnikov, Zadina, and Tkachuk, then moving back is an option for them. And maybe, right. Detroit's looking to move. Moving back to 6 or 7 is an option.
What is interesting is we hear talk that Montreal is looking very much for a center. And if they do that, it's the Finnish center that slides in there, and then that maybe pushes some guys back.
Kotkaniemi. Anyways,
I don't know if I trust you on that one. Okay. Yeah, sure. But that's an interesting dynamic if it works like that, because, for the longest time we thought it was Tkachuk, Svechnikov, Zadina as the 2, 3, 4 after Dahlin. So I think it'll be intriguing to see how that plays out if Montreal doesn't fall into that pattern.
And they do also, we should mention, have Pittsburgh's pick at 22, right? That they got in the Derek Brassard deal, where they got the goaltender Philip Gustafson back. But we're also going to be watching closely what happens with General Manager Pierre Dorion and his staff, and what they're going to do about Mike Hoffman and Erik Karlsson. Obviously, there's been a lot happening off the ice with those two, and the controversy involving the cyberbullying and their wives. Don, they cannot bring Mike Hoffman back. They absolutely have to give him a change of scenery. You don't seem to think that will happen this week, though.
Well, I don't think that any team in the NHL would be foolish enough to take Mike Hoffman right now when it means his fiancée is part of the package. I mean, that's just destructive to the family, to the team family. I don't know that you could sell him for anything right now. They're trying, but that's a tough one. So I don't know what they're going to do with Mike Hoffman. They could try to buy him out if no team, and that might be a crazy notion, but if no team wants him in a trade and no team touches him on waivers, what are you going to do? Pay him $5 million a year for the next 2 to stay at home? You take the lesser option.
I always think, can I just say something,
Yeah.
Kenny? I always think the teams act in their own best interests. And Kenny, I think it's going to be in the best interest of a team to get a guy who people keep calling him a 30-goal scorer. He's never scored 30 goals, but he has the potential to score 30 goals.
I think, you know what, let's I don't want to say what maybe they could have got for him at the trade deadline. I don't know if they could have got a first round pick for him. But if you could get this guy, maybe it's even off waivers, and you could get like you say, it's hard to find goal scorers in the NHL. I know there's a whole lot of baggage. But you're right. I think there may be a team or two out there that say, hey, you know what? If it doesn't work out for us, it doesn't work out for us. But if they don't give up you're not giving up a high draft pick. I think some team might take a flyer on.
How does a coach sell this, or how does a GM sell this to his coach, who sells it to his players? That we've got Mike Hoffman come in, and and let's point this out. She has not been proven guilty
right.
yet.
Well, that's part of it too.
Proven
right?
guilty.
That's part of it too.
But if she is, then I don't know how you sell it to your team. That's really taking a huge risk.
And the other part that has to be discussed here is that they may in fact move Mike Hoffman this week, but they also may move Erik Karlsson. And there is a possibility that both of these players won't be back. And there is a sense that I know they've said they're going to offer Erik Karlsson a contract on July 1, but you speak to any general manager or player personnel director at this point, and they say this would be a good week to trade Erik Karlsson if you're going to do it.
I think so too. I agree with you, Bruce. Like you're eliminating one of the windows to make a deal here, right? And maybe the best. And it's to get draft picks for this year. Maybe you could get a first round pick for next year out of this year's draft if you did it now, right? They don't have that, assuming they don't give up they're making the deal with Colorado to not to give away the first round pick next year. You could get that back potentially if you trade Karlsson this weekend. So I wonder if that's plays into it. There's only so many windows when you can make a big deal, and that's why I think if you don't make it, you're giving up an opportunity here.
Well, let's just be clear about this. Any of us believe that because Pierre Dorion said at the town hall meeting with fans, when asked if Karlsson would be traded, or for a guarantee that Karlsson wouldn't be traded before the draft, he said yes. I can't imagine that he's going to stick to that if there's an offer good enough.
If a better deal comes along, you can always say, look,
Right.
I didn't know that there's going to be an offer this good on the table.
It's like you said, Don, you got to strike while the iron's hot. If they're going to get a deal at this draft, they have to do it. So I think that the question is, what do you get for Erik Karlsson? Because you're not going to get as good a player in return.
No, you're going to get a great package, though.
You might get three. Might get three legitimate players. I think could be legitimate, good players, not great players. I think that's where you have to go, maybe, or maybe four.
But also, let's also be clear about this. Is there any chance that any deal that he does for Erik Karlsson is going to be accepted by the fan base? Because I get the feeling that nobody wants to see Erik Karlsson traded.
But it's a no-win now, and it's a no-win July 1st if you went there too, right? So in one way or the other, you're like we said off the top. I think if the best offer comes at draft day, then why wait till July 1st?
A guy who's been tied to all this Erik Karlsson talk is winger Bobby Ryan. And there was some speculation at the deadline that any package that the Senators made at that point would have to include winger Bobby Ryan. Do you guys see any scenario, at this draft where maybe they can move Bobby Ryan's contract? Because I've heard people talking about buying out Bobby Ryan. I think that's like the most foolish thing I've ever heard, because I don't think that's happening on any day. I don't think they're stroking a check to buy out Bobby Ryan.
I assume they're buying out Marian Gaborik at some point here.
Oh, my goodness.
As long as the injury situation's cleared up. So there's one buyout. Bobby Ryan's certainly not living up to the contract, but he's still a player who can play on your top two lines, and you're disappointed what he costs you, but he's still a guy that can chip in with some goals. So I don't see that happening.
I just never liked the idea from the first place. I mean, if you're going to trade Bobby Ryan in a package with Erik Karlsson, you're diminishing the return on Erik Karlsson because the team has to take along that big contract with still a lot of term left on it. So I didn't think that made any sense at all right from the start that they would have to include Bobby Ryan.
The Senators need some good news here before they go into the summer, before July 1st. And I think one of the things that they could do, and I wonder if either of you guys see this happening, is sign Mark Stone. Get Mark Stone under contract. and perhaps change the channel a little bit. Look, he's got rights to arbitration, so he's going to sign. He's going to get a contract for next year one way or another, but do you guys see a scenario where he signs a long-term deal here?
Well, that's a big question because and that's tied into Carlson perhaps, and it's tied into the direction of where this is going, and whether, sure, he settles arbitration. If it goes to arbitration, you settle for 1 or 2 years or whatever. Will he sign long-term? And you got to have some clarity about where this franchise is going. I think for that to happen, if I'm putting myself in Mark Stone's shoes in that case, I think you would want to have a clear picture of where the franchise is going before you sign a long-term deal.
100%. If I'm any player on that team, I want to know where the franchise is going. I want to know who's still on the team. If Mike Hoffman's still on the team, I want to know a lot of things before I agree. And there's no rush for Mark Stone to sign a deal. There's no rush for Matt Duchene, another guy who's in the same position as Erik Karlsson is in terms of his contract. I don't know why Matt Duchene would want to stay here, frankly. He wanted to leave a team in Colorado because it was rebuilding, and that's what this franchise is doing. So a lot of questions to be answered.
Well, there are a lot of questions to be answered, and we'll see what happens this week at the NHL Draft in Dallas. Make sure you stay tuned to Postmedia's websites for all the details from Dallas. For Postmedia, I'm Bruce Garriock with Don Brennan and Kim Warren.